I watched my mother-in-law slide two brand-new iPhone 17 Pro Max boxes across the table like she was crowning royalty. My niece and nephew squealed, cameras went up, everyone laughed. Then my daughter looked at her eyes wide, hands still waiting for the third box that never came. She finally asked, soft as a whisper, "Grandma, did you get one for me too?" My mother-in-law didn't even flinch. She smiled and said, "No, because you're not part of the family." The room went dead quiet, like someone cut the power. My little girl's face folded in on itself, and I felt something in my chest snap clean in half. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just met that woman's eyes, smiled right back, and decided she had 24 hours to get out of my house, the house she'd been living in for free while she treated my child like an outsider. Because if that's what she thinks family means, then she doesn't get to live under my roof and use that word like a weapon. My name is Zephyr Knox, and I'm about to tell you the full story, every ugly detail, every quiet warning sign I ignored, and the moment I finally stopped protecting an adult's comfort over a child's heart. But before I do, I'd love to know you're here with me and listening. Comment hi or tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes just knowing someone is there makes it easier to say the hard stuff out loud. And if you've ever had to stand up to someone you never thought you'd have to stand up to, especially for your kid, please subscribe. Not because I'm chasing numbers, but because these stories don't get told unless someone stays to hear them. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. I've always believed that the most dangerous cruelty doesn't come with raised voices or broken things. It's quieter, polished, polite. It shows up in the form of a sigh, a glance, a correction wrapped in concern. And in my house, that kind of cruelty came dressed like family. My name is Zephyr Knox. I'm 31, a freelance brand designer working out of my converted garage studio in Matthews, just outside Charlotte. I live with my wife, Bryn, and our 13-year-old daughter, Marin. My story starts not with a blow-up, but with a whisper. With a smile too stiff. With a girl too quiet. On paper, our life looked stable. Bryn worked part-time for a local nonprofit, juggled board meetings and bake sales with the same calm grace she'd always had. She was raised to believe keeping the peace was a virtue, especially with her mother. Me, I didn't come from that kind of family. So when Bryn suggested her mom move in for a while, I said yes. Not because I wanted to, because I didn't want to be the son-in-law who said no. Deirdre Vale, 67, widowed, sold her townhouse after claiming she was drowning in medical debt. She told us she couldn't afford rent anywhere decent. Bryn's eyes filled with guilt. Just a few months, she said, until she gets on her feet. I patched up the guest room like I was prepping it for Airbnb, painted the walls, replaced the mattress, put up new curtains. I wanted her to feel welcome. That was the point, right? Family takes care of each other. But within a week, the energy shifted. At first, it was small things. Deirdre would grimace after tasting my coffee and say, "Strong." Not how we made it growing up. She reorganized our pantry while I was out. Left clippings from parenting articles on the counter for Bryn with passive-aggressive highlights. She'd say things like, "Kids need boundaries. Don't overindulge her," when Marin stayed up late reading. But what got under my skin the most? The way she interacted with Marin. Or didn't. Marin is the kind of kid who lives in her imagination, sketchbooks everywhere, pages filled with creatures and dreamscapes and characters with way too much backstory. She's gentle, thoughtful, and like most adopted kids, she carries her sensitivity close to the surface. When Marin showed Deirdre a drawing, she barely looked up. "Huh. That's interesting." When Marin shared a poem, Deirdre would nod, say nothing. She didn't use Marin's name much, just her or Sweetie in a flat tone. And I started noticing something. Marin would glance at her grandma before reacting to things, like she was checking to see if it was safe to smile. I kept it to myself. For a while. Then Colton came to visit. Bryn's older brother. Colton and his wife Sierra lived in Providence Plantation, the kind of Charlotte neighborhood with gates, golf carts, and imported mailboxes. Their twins, Knox and Haven, were only a year younger than Marin, but carried themselves like small CEOs. The second they walked in, Deirdre lit up. Her voice got higher. She laughed louder. She asked questions. How's fencing class? Are you still playing violin? Did your school send out the summer abroad program details? Yet Maren faded into the background without anyone telling her to. She just knew. That night Deirdre cooked her special Sunday roast. Knox got extra gravy. Haven had her own separate side of mac and cheese, no breadcrumbs. Maren Deirdre forgot she didn't eat red meat. Forgot or didn't care. Maren said thank you, ate the peas, then went upstairs without a word. I brought it up to Bryn after the dishes were done. She cooked around their preferences, but not ours. Not Maren's. She's adjusting, Bryn said quickly. She's in a new environment. She's trying. She's not trying with Maren. She's 70. She says things weird. It doesn't mean anything. That's when I stopped talking about it and started writing it down. I opened the Notes app on my phone and titled a new entry Deirdre Patterns. I logged the roast dinner, the sketchbook comment. The sudden shift in tone when Colton entered the room. I didn't know yet what I was building, but deep down I felt it. Something wasn't right, and if no one else was going to protect Maren's place in this family, then it had to be me. It started with whispers, or more accurately calls that ended the moment I walked in. Deirdre began taking phone calls out on the porch, talking just low enough to be unintelligible. Her tone was lighter, more conspiratorial. Sometimes she laughed. But the moment I opened the front door, it was always okay, gotta go, followed by a chirpy hang-up. I wasn't paranoid. I just paid attention. One Tuesday afternoon, I heard her say it. I just stepped outside to grab a box of decorations from the garage when I caught her voice floating through the open window. Yes, the Pro Max. The newest one. Make it 2. They'll lose their minds. She didn't see me. She was facing the yard. I stayed still. Pro Max. As in iPhone 17 Pro Max. She ended the call, turned and froze when she saw me. Just figuring out birthday plans, she said smoothly. You know Knox and Haven's party is coming up. Right, I said, forcing a smile. Joint party this year. Much easier. She nodded. All the kids together. I made a note in my phone that night. Sept 12 Deirdre call. iPhone 17 Pro Max. 2. Surprise. Maren's birthday was the same week. From that point on, things shifted. Deirdre started receiving more packages than usual, small, carefully wrapped boxes she'd carry straight to her room. I once asked if she needed help carrying one. She clutched it to her chest. Just some things Colton asked me to hold on to. The lies were never loud. They were thin, brittle, breakable if you pushed too hard. She still complained about her finances. Said her meds were getting too expensive. That Social Security barely covered her insurance. That she was blessed to live with her children. But somehow her skincare routine had leveled up. New eye cream, designer sunscreen, organic tea no one else in the house drank. And there were slips. One morning she left a letter open on the kitchen counter. A financial statement from a brokerage firm. My eye caught the balance before she snatched it up, more than enough to rent an apartment in downtown Charlotte for a year. Bryn didn't see it. Deirdre made sure she didn't. I called my best friend Juno that night. She's running a play, Juno said bluntly. You can't fight her in public, not yet. Keep documenting. Every slight, every lie. If she's setting something up, you're gonna need the receipts. So I kept going. Screenshotted every text Deirdre sent in the family group chat that only mentioned Knox and Haven. Not once did she mention Maren. No good luck on her spelling bee. No happy birthday emoji. Nothing. The final hit that week came from Maren. She approached me while I was loading dishes and said, Dad, did I do something wrong to Grandma? The weight of that question sank into me like an anchor. I knelt down beside her and looked her in the eye. You did nothing wrong, I said. You are kind and good and smart. Sometimes people don't see clearly. But it's not your fault. She nodded, but I could tell. Something inside her had already shifted. Then Deirdre dropped the suggestion. Why don't we just do one big birthday party this year, she said breezily over dinner. The twins, Maren, everyone, all together. It's simpler. You know how busy people are. It sounded harmless. But I saw it for what it was. She wanted an audience. She wanted a stage. I smiled, agreed, even offered to help with planning. But inside, I was done playing nice. Because if she was going to try something, make a point, send a message, I needed to be ready. Not just with a feeling, with proof. The week before the party felt like a machine that I couldn't stop. We were caught in a flurry of planning, ordering, coordinating, making lists, crossing things off, except I had the sinking feeling that the person pulling the strings wasn't me or Bryn. It was Deirdre. And she wasn't planning a party. She was staging a show. It started with a conversation at breakfast. For an age like this, Deirdre said, stirring her tea with a little more force than necessary, you want to make sure it's memorable. They're entering their teens, you know. That's a real milestone. Bryn nodded slowly. We were thinking something intimate, just friends and close family. Oh no, honey. No. You only get one shot at 13. You should go big. Invite everyone. Make it count. And just like that, it wasn't a birthday party anymore. It was an event. The invitations expanded. The community center reservation went from one room to a double space with better lighting. I designed the digital invites. Bryn coordinated RSVPs and catering. Colton and Sierra said they'd bring beverages and maybe a photographer because they had a friend with a drone. Deirdre, of course, had opinions. We need a good photo backdrop, she said one evening, flipping through Pinterest boards. And the gifts, well, the gifts should reflect how much we value them. They're practically little adults. Maren, sitting across the room, barely looked up from her sketchpad. Later that night, while we were folding laundry, she told me quietly, I don't want anything fancy. Just like sketch markers. And maybe a new phone if it's not too much. I knew her phone was on its last leg. We'd talked about replacing it. Something affordable, functional, nothing extravagant. She wasn't asking for a status symbol, just something to stay connected, something her friends had already had for a year. I said, we'll see what we can do. Okay. She smiled, but I saw it. She was watching Deirdre out of the corner of her eye, as if even hoping for something came with conditions. A few days later, I caught Deirdre on the porch again. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I'd just walked past on the way to the trash bins, but I heard her say it plain as day. Remember the Pro Max, the newest one. They're going to love it. Everyone should see their reaction. She hung up before I reached the porch. Inside, Bryn was icing cupcakes. Maren was upstairs. And I just stood there holding a trash bag, wondering how far this was going to go. The deliveries started coming daily, packages of all sizes. Deirdre was always the one to meet the delivery guy's sign, quickly hustle everything to her room. One afternoon, I passed her in the hallway struggling with a medium-sized box. The label read, Fry Electronics. She noticed me notice it and turned her body swiftly to shield the label. Colton's, she said before I even asked. I'm just holding it for him. Don't make that face. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The lie was thin, and she knew it. Meanwhile, Bryn and I were finalizing the setup at the community center. I'd booked the smaller room, enough space for friends, family, and a few kids to run around without overwhelming anyone. Deirdre said it was too cramped. You don't want the twins to feel boxed in. They're used to more space. I didn't budge, but I understood her angle now. She wasn't planning for comfort. She was planning for spectacle. Every decision she made had one purpose: make Knox and Haven the center of attention, and quietly but decisively push Maren to the margins. One night, during a casual conversation with a neighbor, Mrs. Daly, from across the street, Deirdre said something that chilled me. They're growing up so fast, Mrs. Daly had remarked. Yes, Deirdre smiled. Knox and Haven are really thriving. Such bright kids. And Maren, well, she's our special case, isn't she? I saw Bryn flinch. Mrs. Daly looked confused. I stepped forward and changed the subject before Maren could hear. But I made a mental note. This wasn't a slip. It was a strategy. That night I told Bryn I wanted to scale back the event. It's not about the party anymore. She's making it about status. Bryn hesitated. She just wants it to be nice. Does she? I asked. Or does she want to prove something? There was a pause. Then Bryn said, I'll talk to her. But maybe we just get through it. For Maren's sake. That's the thing. I didn't want to just get through it. I wanted to protect our daughter from the slow, systematic erosion of her sense of belonging. The night before the setup, I heard Deirdre on the phone again. I couldn't hear everything, but the final sentence came through clear as a bell. Make sure they're all watching when it's unwrapped. I stood in the hallway in the dark, hand clenched. Tomorrow was no longer just a party. It was a declaration. The morning of setup, the house felt like a stage crew prepping for opening night. Boxes, balloons, lists. Bryn was cross-checking RSVPs. I was packing up the car. Maren stood near the front window, sketchpad in her arms, but she wasn't drawing. She was watching. At the community center, I took the lead on decor while Bryn coordinated with the staff. Deirdre arrived last, sweeping in like a pageant coach. Let's move the gift table, she said. Front and center. That way we get the best angle for photos. I looked at the original layout I'd helped draft. The gift table had been against a side wall. Accessible but subtle. I think we should stick to the plan, I said. But Colton and Sierra will need space. And their gifts will be, well, you know. It'll look better this way. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes said, don't challenge me. I didn't move the table. But I didn't argue. I asked one of the staff to take a photo of the layout, just in case. Back home, I was cleaning up the living room when I found a stack of name cards near a spool of ribbon. Each one had a message written in Deirdre's looping script. To my brilliant boy Knox. To my shining star Haven. That was it. No cards for Maren. No blanks waiting to be filled. I didn't touch them. I didn't bring them up. I just photographed them and logged the time. I was no longer waiting for proof. I was collecting it. That evening we had a few neighbors over helping inflate balloons and fold tablecloths. Deirdre held court with a glass of white wine telling stories. And again she said it. Maren's a bit different, you know. Not like the other two. But she's got her own thing going. She said it with a smile. Like it was an endearing oddity. Maren heard that one. She was standing near the stairs holding a tray of utensils. She didn't say anything, just kept walking. Later that night she asked me, is it bad to be different? No, I said. It's the best thing about you. She nodded. But she didn't smile. The worst moment came the next day during a last-minute Target run. I was with Maren picking up batteries and some extra candles. She brought up the phone again. Dad, she said gently, I know it's a lot, but I'd be happy with anything that works. Doesn't have to be fancy. I smiled. We'll figure it out. Behind us, Deirdre appeared. I hadn't even noticed her following us down the aisle. She stepped in without warning. Zephyr, don't encourage that. She doesn't need a phone, especially not with how sensitive she is. It'll just make things worse. That evening, I passed by her again on the porch. The Pro Max, yes, she said into her phone. Unwrap right after the cake. Make sure there's footage. She wasn't hiding anymore. Back at the community center that night, we finalized decorations. Deirdre arrived again and immediately began repositioning items. She moved the gift table again, this time dragging over a banner that read, "For our future stars." It hovered directly over the twins' setup. Maren's gifts, simple boxes from friends, were off to the side, half hidden behind a pillar. This isn't accidental, I told Bryn quietly. Your mother's staging this. She's being dramatic, Bryn said, but her voice lacked conviction. Let's just get through tomorrow. I nodded. But I made another silent promise to myself. I would let the show go on. But I'd be ready for the curtain to fall. The morning of the party began in a strange quiet. The house was up before sunrise, but instead of chaos, everything moved in slow motion, careful, contained. Maren dressed with a reverence I hadn't seen before. She picked her favorite navy dress with the tiny constellations stitched into the hem and asked Bryn to help her braid her hair twice. She wore the silver chain we gave her for her last birthday, the one with the little M charm she never took off. When she looked in the mirror, her eyes were steady, hopeful. She didn't say much, but I could see it on her face. She believed this day meant something. 13. A threshold. A new page. I wanted that to be true. By the time we arrived at the community center, the parking lot was already half full. Balloons bobbed along the front railings. Inside, Bryn and I moved quickly through final setups, soundcheck, snacks, the stations for games, and photo booth. Friends trickled in, neighbors, classmates from school, a few families from Colton and Sierra's circle. The air buzzed with chatter and color. Deirdre arrived nearly 45 minutes late. But when she walked in, it was as if a director had stepped on set. She didn't greet us. She didn't look at Marin. She immediately moved toward the camera crew. Sierra had arranged, her tone clipped, assertive. "Make sure you get good coverage during the gift segment. That's the highlight," she said to the guy holding the gimbal. "We'll start with the twins. Colton's people need to leave early." And just like that, the flow of the party shifted. What had started as a celebration turned into a performance. I stayed close to Marin. She was doing her best, laughing with her friends, helping a classmate with the cupcake table, but her eyes kept searching. For Deirdre. For acknowledgement. It didn't come. When it was time for gifts, Deirdre raised her voice above the room, smiling wide. "Let's open presents now while everyone's still fresh." She clapped twice and waved toward the twins. "Marin too?" I asked quietly, trying to keep it casual. She didn't answer me directly. "Knox and Haven will go first since some of our guests are on a tight schedule." The air inside me dropped. The gift table had been curated, organized no doubt by Deirdre's hands. Dozens of brightly wrapped packages were stacked on one side where Knox and Haven now stood. On the other, a modest row, 3, maybe 4 gifts sat near Marin's chair. She didn't complain, but I saw at the shift in her shoulders, the way she looked to me then down. We moved into the circle. Knox tore into a box of headphones. Haven unwrapped a set of luxury journals with her initials embossed in gold. The applause came easy. Laughter flashes from phones. The twins beamed. Then came the moment. Deirdre stood, motioned for quiet. "Before we wrap this up," she said, "there's something special from Grandma." She disappeared behind a curtain near the back, and when she returned, she was carrying 2 identical gift boxes, large and glinting in metallic wrapping paper ribbons tied like a bow tie. Everyone hushed. She handed one box to Knox, one to Haven. Marin sat forward in her seat. Her smile appeared like the first sign of spring. I knew what she thought was coming. I saw it in her body, this belief, fragile and daring. The twins ripped through the wrapping. Cheers erupted. iPhone 17 Pro Max. Top of the line. "Oh my God," Haven squealed. Knox raised his like a trophy. Someone shouted, "Whoa, those are insane." Deirdre smiled, satisfied. "I just want my grandchildren to have the best." The room pulsed with admiration. Phones went up. A few people clapped. Marin looked at the remaining space behind Deirdre, waiting. But there was no third box. No mention of another gift. Nothing. Just silence. And that silence hurt worse than anything that came before. Marin looked at her hands folded in her lap. Then in a voice so small I almost missed it, she asked Grandma, "What about mine?" The question rang out like a pin drop. Deirdre turned slowly, her voice cutting through the room. "No," she said, "because you're not part of this family." Time stopped. Marin froze. I stood. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. A couple people shifted their gaze, uneasy. Some still held their phones recording without thinking. Deirdre didn't flinch. She added, "You were adopted. You're not blood. You should know your place." The breath left my body. I saw Bryn's face collapse, horror washing over her features. I moved toward Marin, but she was already on her feet, hands shaking, cheeks flaming. She ran. Down the side hall. Into the restroom. I followed her. I didn't look back. I found her in the corner stall, curled up, sobbing into her sleeves. I dropped to the tile floor outside and spoke gently through the door. "You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing about you is wrong. I'm here. I've got you." I didn't know how long we sat like that. Eventually Bryn came in, her eyes red, her body trembling. She didn't speak. She just knocked once on the stall and said, "Baby, can I come in?" Marin unlocked it. The party unraveled without formal ending. Some guests left quickly, embarrassed. Others lingered near the food table, awkward and unsure. Colton and Sierra stood by the balloons, whispering fiercely. Deirdre remained seated at the center table, unbothered, sipping from a paper cup. She looked like a queen who had done exactly what she came to do. We didn't say goodbye. We left. In the car, Bryn didn't speak. She stared straight ahead. Maren leaned against me silent, her hand gripping mine like an anchor. I knew the damage had just begun. That night no one ate dinner. Maren shut herself in her room. She didn't even undress. Just curled up in bed, fully clothed, her phone turned off. Bryn knocked twice and got no response. She left a glass of water outside the door. I stood at the top of the stairs and stared at nothing. We didn't sleep. In our room, Bryn sat on the edge of the bed, fingers twisting her wedding ring. I don't know who she is anymore, she said. She's always been this, I replied. We just didn't want to see it. The next morning I found Deirdre in the kitchen. She was humming. She stirred her coffee, complained it was too strong, and asked if we needed anything from the store. She didn't mention the party. Didn't acknowledge what had happened. When I brought up Maren, she raised her eyebrows and said, "She'll get over it. Kids are too soft these days." That's when I really knew she hadn't acted out of anger. She'd acted on purpose. Later that morning I got a call from Maren's school. Her counselor said she'd been withdrawn in class, unresponsive, avoiding group work. She hadn't turned in a single assignment since the party. She's usually engaged, the counselor said. Something changed. We'd like to meet with you. I thanked her and hung up, but my hands were shaking. It wasn't just an incident anymore. It was trauma, and it had consequences. Bryn and I talked that night for real. No more defense, no more benefit of the doubt. We can't keep her here, I said. She's not safe. She's my mother, Bryn whispered. She's our daughter. That broke the spell. The next day, while folding laundry, I found an envelope tucked inside one of Deirdre's coats, slipped between receipts. It was a printed invoice from Fry Electronics, 2 iPhone 17 Pro Max. Purchased 12 days before the party, paid in full, shipped to our address. Email confirmation under a name I recognized, mine. My old Amazon account, the one I hadn't used in years. Somehow she had accessed it. Maybe through Bryn. Maybe while using our computer. The name and billing address were mine. But the card wasn't. She had used our household, our identity, as her staging ground. And she did it without shame. When I confronted her in the kitchen, she didn't deny it. She just turned her back and kept chopping onions. "That's fraud," I said. "No," she said. "That's gratitude. I needed a card. You had one. You should be proud I bought something meaningful for once." And Maren. She shrugged. Maren's soft. "That's your doing. She needs to learn life doesn't hand you things." I stared at her, stunned. Then came the final blow. "Bryn will come around," she said. "She's always been loyal to me. You," she pointed with her knife. "You're the problem. You're the one turning her against her own mother." That night, Bryn heard everything. She stood in the hallway, silent. Then she walked to Maren's door and knocked. This time, Maren let her in. They sat together for over an hour. Afterward, Bryn came downstairs, tear-streaked and hollow-eyed. "She's leaving," she said. "Mom's leaving. I'll help pack. I'll say it. I'll mean it." The next few days were fragile. Maren avoided the kitchen. Meals were eaten in bedrooms. The living room was a ghost town. I began looking into therapy. Bryn called her brother and told him not to drop by. We kept everything quiet, focused on healing. But Deirdre didn't leave. She lingered. And at the next meal she did attend 3 days later, she looked directly at Maren across the table and said with a sneer, "So what, you're going to cry forever?" I stood up. So did Bryn. And I said for the first time, without a trace of doubt, "You have to go." She didn't argue, but her eyes narrowed. This wasn't over. Not for her. But for us it had to be. Maren wasn't just quiet after the counselor's call. She was erasing herself. She stopped drawing. That alone was enough to make my chest cave in. Her sketchbook, once a permanent fixture on the couch, the kitchen counter, even the bathroom sink, vanished. She gave one-word answers, shrugged when spoken to, avoided eye contact. She didn't ask to play music in the car anymore. She didn't linger in rooms. She slipped away before she could be pulled into the center of anything. That night I sat in the kitchen with my laptop, the only light in the house coming from the screen. Everyone else was asleep, but I couldn't let it go. I started reading, studies, reports. I found a paper on the psychological effects of familial exclusion, and suddenly it felt like I was reading about my daughter. Words hit like punches. Chronic shame. Diminished self-worth. Hypervigilance to emotional rejection. I took notes, linked behaviors. I cross-checked symptoms. My daughter wasn't just sad. She was internalizing that she didn't belong in her own family. At 4 a.m., Bryn came downstairs. She looked like she hadn't slept either. She sat beside me. For a moment she said nothing. Then my mom used the word family, like a weapon, she said. And she pointed it right at Maren. That was the moment Bryn shifted. Not because she stopped loving her mother, but because she started loving our daughter more. We can't keep pretending this is fixable, I told her. She nodded. No more trying to keep the peace. The peace is fake. We choose Maren. By sunrise, we had a plan. I needed more than emotion to hold the line. I needed proof. That's when I remembered the whispers at the party. The stranger saying, "That one's not really hers." The sidelong glances, the pregnant pauses. I started combing through the family group chat, digging back weeks. A message stood out. Deirdre had sent a reminder to a cousin before the party about the adopted one, saying she's sweet, but not blood. It was subtle, just enough plausible deniability to make it slippery. But it was there. I dug further. A friend of Bryn's texted her a few days before the party saying your mom was so weird at brunch, kept calling the twins her only real grandkids. I thought Maren was too. The pieces locked into place. This wasn't an accidental cruelty. It was seeded, planted. After Maren left for school the next morning, I turned to Bryn. We do it now. We talk to her. No more delay. Deirdre was in the kitchen again, wearing the same pink fleece she always did in winter. She was stirring her coffee like nothing had happened. She looked up at us and smiled. "What's with the morning face, bad news?" "Sit down," I said. Her smile faltered. She sat. I didn't raise my voice. I laid it out point by point. Her comment at the party. The gift imbalance. The receipts for the iPhones. The quote-unquote jokes to neighbors. The messages. The way Maren was unraveling because of her. "I'm not asking if it was intentional," I said. "I'm telling you what it did." Deirdre blinked. Then she leaned back and said flatly, "Fine. I'll apologize. If that's what you want. I'll say whatever you need me to say." "No," I said. "We don't want you to perform. We want you to actually care." "That girl is too sensitive," she said with a dismissive wave. "You're all too soft. It was a party. People get left out. That's life." Then she laughed and added, "I gave those phones to the twins because they'll carry the family name. That's worth investing in." I looked at Bryn. Her face was pale still. I could see it in her, the final thread snapping. "You think I made a mistake marrying him," she said slowly, her voice trembling. Deirdre didn't answer. "You think adopting Maren was a mistake?" she added. I think Deirdre said, her voice sharp, that you used to be smarter about your life. We didn't need to say anything else. But Deirdre wasn't done. That afternoon she called Colton. By evening he and Sierra showed up at our door. She told us you were throwing her out. Colton said, his arms crossed, that she's being treated like a criminal. I didn't argue. I handed him a folder. Inside were the receipts for the phones, screenshots of the group chat, a written summary of her statements, photos of the party table, the 2 gift boxes, the empty space beside them, the message from Bryn's friend. "I'm not throwing her out," I said. "I'm protecting my child." Colton read in silence. Sierra leaned in to look. Her mouth tightened. "You really think she meant it all like that?" Colton asked. "She didn't just mean it," I said. "She planned it." Bryn stood beside me, silent. Deirdre came downstairs then. She saw the folder. She saw their faces, and still she sneered. "I won't apologize for saying the truth," she said. "She's not one of us. That's just how it is." I looked at her, dead calm. "You've lived in our house for 2 years, rent-free. You used our cards. You hurt our daughter. And you're still doing it. You have 24 hours to leave." Her smile vanished. "You don't mean that." "I do. This is our decision. Mine and Bryn's." Colton stepped forward, mouth open, but Bryn raised a hand. "No," she said. "You don't get to defend this." Deirdre's voice cracked. "I'll tell everyone. At church. At the next family dinner. I'll tell them what you did." I met her eyes. "Then tell them. And while you're at it, tell them why. Tell them you looked at a 13-year-old girl and made her believe she was nothing." She opened her mouth, but I didn't wait. I turned to Colton. "You can take her. Or she can find a hotel. Either way, she's out tomorrow." She stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Colton followed. The house fell into a different kind of quiet. That night, Bryn cried in the hallway. I held her. Upstairs, Maren asked if we were okay. I told her the truth. "Yes, baby. Now we are." The next morning, Deirdre packed. Not in silence. Of course not. She moved with theatrical sighs, muttering about betrayal and abandonment. She made sure to clatter dishes loudly in the sink. She left her door open, daring someone to challenge her. We didn't. Colton arrived at 10 on the dot. His face was pinched. He didn't make eye contact with me. Deirdre hauled 2 bags down the stairs and paused at the door like she expected a final confrontation. Instead, Maren stepped forward. She stood in the hallway, her shoulders small but straight. She held her hands together. "Goodbye," she said, soft but clear. "I hope you'll be kind, somewhere else." Deirdre didn't hug her, didn't thank her. She nodded once and walked out. At the car, I heard her whisper something to Colton. "She'll never belong. They'll regret this." It didn't even make me angry. It just confirmed everything. In the weeks that followed, we didn't speak to her. But we heard about her. Sierra called Bryn. Apparently, Deirdre had started criticizing everything: how Sierra cooked, how they disciplined the twins. She even accused Colton of favoring Knox over Haven. The same old cycle, just a different house. Colton called me late one night. "You were right," he said. "We didn't see it before, but now we do. I didn't say I told you so. I just said good. Do better with her than we did." Meanwhile, in our home, the air got lighter.